Here's a nice long fly, a red and white pike fly. Before we start, let me show you the difference between these two different colors of rabbit hair hide. If you look at this, you can see on the white one that the fur kind of goes down the length of the hide, but on the red one it kind of goes perpendicular, goes the other way. And that's going to be important as we get a little farther on in the fly. So let's start with this one now. Get your hook locked into the vise. Start your thread on. I'm going to start mine towards the back a little here. Snip off that extra thread. Okay, now we're going to take a piece of that rabbit. We want to get a piece that's as long as we were just dealing with here, but we also want to come a little bit farther up on the hook. So we're not going to tie it in here, we're going to kind of tie it in the middle. And we're going to go back about as far as the other fly we're just looking at. Now you want to take the end that has the fur coming off the hide to tie in, or to tie off the tail, not the side that's here. So you want your tail end to be this end off the back. Okay, so we're going to line that up to the length we want. We're going to come forward here to our tie off point. We're going to tie in the middle of the strip, and you'll see why in a moment. So just going to kind of pull these hairs apart till we get closer to the hide and tie those down. A couple of wraps, readjust the material here, peel that apart. You can wet your fingers and kind of use that to control this a little bit. Get that out of the way for you. We're just going to lock that down nice and tight. Okay, now we're going to take this, and even though this one's not coming off, it's coming down perpendicular or parallel to the hide, we're still going to wrap that. But as we're wrapping this around the hook, we're trying to get those fibers of the rabbit hair to go back like this. So we're going to kind of have to push them in that direction. You kind of convince them. Actually, move the thread to the front here because that's where we're going to tie that off in a minute. Okay, so now we're going to start wrapping that hide towards the hook. And as we're wrapping, we're just kind of pulling those hair fibers back, wrapping it forward, kind of putting the hide right over the hide that was right behind it to help hold it down. And now we're going to tie that off. You can see that we're a little bit more forward on the hook, of course. That's okay. We're going to get that tied in. And now we're going to grab the red. And the red, because it's going perpendicular to that hide again, that's going to wrap in a little bit better for us. Now, again, we want to make sure we grab the right end of it. So I'm going to take it like this. The hide's facing me. And this is the way I want to put it on the hook because that's the way I'm going to wrap it when I wrap it on. So I'm going to take this end and I'm going to tie that in to the very back here. And just capture that in there. And tie that down, give a bunch of good wraps to hold that in nice and tight. Now we're going to advance the thread towards the front of the hook. Now some of these white ones I got to kind of pull back because they're kind of sticking out the front. Now we'll bring that thread all the way up to the front and we'll leave it there. Now the reason this is cut like that, different than the white, is because this is going to wrap around. We were able to manage the white wrapping around even though it wasn't cut the same, but this will lay back and it's a lot easier to manage as we roll this forward. This just builds up the red section of the fly here over and over until we get up to right there, and I'll pass the thread behind it. Capture that once there, give it a couple more. Once I've got a few wraps on that, then I can come in with my scissors and get right down in there and cut that material off. Now I want to make sure that I get a bunch of wraps to build up that head. I'm going to pull back those extra fibers that were kind of forward there. I'm just going to build up that black head that you see on the original. And my thread just broke, and that's not a problem. You'll have that sometimes when you're tightening down on these things. So one thing I like to use here is I like to use these dental floss threaders. They're just a loop of plastic. So I'll take that on my thread and I'll just come down here. Might not be able to see it. And I capture the thread in that loop. Had to cut that thread because sometimes that very fine piece, that when it breaks, it's hard to get. And then what you want to do is once you capture that in the loop, you just push this piece of plastic through the bobbin, bring it out front, and it pulls right through. Now that head was wrapped enough that I'm not too concerned it's going to roll off on me while I'm doing this. So now I'm just going to start that head back up with this new piece of thread. But I want to make sure that when I cut this off, I'm getting both the new piece and the old piece of thread where it broke off. So I've got two pieces captured here, snip them both off, and then I'm back to getting my head built up here. Now I'm just making this head bigger, just a little different color. Personally, I'm just trying to capture all that, or cover up all that red, because I want to make it look good for me as much as I want to make it look good for the fish. Once that's done, come in with the whip finisher and put a whip finish on that. I always like to do 2 whip finishes. Maybe it's because I don't believe the first one, but 2 was good. Come back in, cut that off, cut that thread off here. And this is going out for pike, so they like to get their teeth involved a lot. So if you take your super glue and you just drop some of that on here, cover up that head nice and good. Get it from the underside. And if it's on there kind of in one spot, you can take your bodkin and you can use that to kind of move that super glue around a little bit. That just helps hold the whip finish in place. And there it is, the red and white pike fly. Go catch some toothy critters.